Hi, it's Dwyer. Today is July the 31st, 2017. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Decidedly mixed weekend this last weekend for me in betting on boxing, right? Jarrell Miller delivered. He got the KO over Jarrell Washington, right? Adrien Broner did not deliver over Mikey Garcia. Let's discuss both fights, the win and the loss. Now, Jarrell Miller showed us a lot in this fight. I believe he is ready in this heavyweight division, right, 2017. He's ready to fight for a title right now. If I were him, since he's an unbeaten fighter, since there's a great sparring story and controversy about whether or not he suffered a concussion in sparring against unbeaten champion Deontay Wilder, if I were Miller, I wouldn't try to become a mandatory contender, right? At this point, I would feel that the fans are gonna demand eventually that I be given a title shot. The heavyweight belt is splintered right now. Too many men hold a share of the title. None of them have the moral authority to ignore a guy who's unbeaten, whose fight style, come forward, front foot heavy, he's going to pressure you, he's going to try to overpower you, is fan friendly, right? I just get the feeling that Miller, who is the best talker in the heavyweight division, that much is clear, right? I just feel that Miller is the kind of guy who would haunt a champ who actually avoids him. All of these champions want credibility. All of them want to be viewed as legitimate. You can hardly be viewed as legitimate if you're ignoring obvious contenders like this guy, right? So if I'm Miller, there's too much risk in fighting an elimination bout, right? His style has some holes. We'll discuss the holes, right? In my opinion, if he takes an elimination bout and if he loses, that's going to give all of these champions plausible deniability, right? They'll be able to then make the claim that they're not fighting Miller because there are other more worthy opponents out there, right? Like whoever beats Miller, right? So if I'm Miller, I don't play around with that. I have a great sparring story that a promoter can use to get the sellout, right? I can show up to Deontay Wilder fights and taunt him. Fans will be impressed by the fact that Miller is sparring with the likes of Deontay Wilder. They're going to look at how he destroyed Jarrell Washington, who didn't get destroyed this way by Deontay Wilder, right? You don't have to be the mandatory to get a shot at the title, folks. You can literally just put yourself in contender status. That's what Miller has done, right? I think he has a good shot at the heavyweight title based on styles. Let's talk about it. In this fight, in my opinion, he's channeling Abel Sanchez / Carson Jones. You remember Carson Jones' first fight against Kell Brook, right? He's on his front foot, coming forward, but he's not throwing punches. He doesn't want to get countered on the way in. So when Washington is fresh, you're going to notice that Miller, who weighs, I'm not kidding here, close to 300 pounds, right? He's a very big man. Even by heavyweight standards, he's a heavier man than any of the heavyweight champions today. Miller is just walking forward. It's positional boxing. He's trying to get Washington backing up without opening up. It's a shrewd move, right? Because he's not overexerting himself. Now let me say, there was a recent fight. Style-wise, in my opinion, it's an important fight. At the lighter weights, welterweight, it was Omar Figueroa against Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Now, Omar Figueroa doesn't really have a back foot game. There are parts of his game that, quite frankly, I don't like. I personally feel that Ghost was the better fighter than Figueroa, right? But Ghost, of course, now is older. Figueroa is the young lion. Well, Figueroa ended Ghost's career, knocks him down 4 or 5 times in the fight. And what's important is when the Ghost comes forward on Figueroa, Figueroa stands his ground. He does not back up. He has the kind of game where as you come hunting him, the way Jarrell Miller is hunting Gerald Washington, right? Rather than back up, which is what the Carson Joneses and the Jarrell Millers want you to do, right? They're trying to bully you over to the side of the ropes. And Omar Figueroa, right? In fact, a Floyd Mayweather, at times, will stand his ground without throwing punches back himself. Right? That's what Washington should have done here. I know it's easy to say from outside the ring when you don't have some almost 300-pound behemoth leaning on you. But understand, by backing up, Gerald Washington plays right into Jarrell Miller's game. By contrast, Omar Figueroa just stands there, leans, and then has the kind of short game. It's not a mid-range game, it's a short game, where Figueroa is able to look at Garcia. He's able to look at Garcia's eyes. He knows the angles, right? If you're a short-range guy, as the two of you are grappling, you should have an innate sense of where the other guy's hands are. So you would know what the other guy can throw. In other words, if you're grappling and you have an arm bar here, and you have your chin in the same plane as the arm bar, then you would look down and you see the other guy's right hand, if you're on this side of him, and you would know he cannot hit me with an uppercut. I have that blocked. Right? You could also tell, too, from the feet, whether or not the guy has leverage to get off certain shots. And, of course, the guys who know how to operate short range. Andre Ward against Alan Green, one of my favorite fights. Know how to keep an arm free. So they're just looking for an opening to hit you with a big shot. Right? That's not Gerald Washington's game. Gerald Washington was ill-equipped to handle Jarrell Miller on his front foot, walking him down without throwing punches. Right? Washington's backing up. He doesn't have the back foot game of, let's say, an Ali. He can't dance away from the guy. Right? Because he's not a up on his toes type of fighter. Let me also point out, too, that fighters are human beings just like the rest of us. I don't know who the genius was who made the decision. Right after Gerald Washington gets stopped by Deontay Wilder. Right? Stopped. First time in his career. To put him in the ring against an almost 300-pound guy who's front foot heavy. Who's going to force him to fight. Who has power. right? This was the wrong opponent for this moment of Jarrell Washington's career, right? Understand, you get stopped by Wilder, that's traumatic. Your next fight, in my opinion, style-wise, should be against a guy who's going to allow you to think, who's going to allow you to soak in the arena, who's going to give you time to implement your strategy. You don't go from the pot to the frying pan. You don't go from getting stopped to then facing another young lion who's front foot heavy, who's trying to stop you and who's going to try to suffocate you every round, who's not going to give you time to think. This was the wrong type of opponent for Jarrell Washington. Let's talk about the holes in Jarrell Miller's game. Right? This guy really can't get out of the way of your punches, can he? He's a big guy. He's in front of you. Now, fortunately for him, he knows he can't make you miss. Right? This isn't the guy throwing feints. You think he's going left. You throw a punch to the left. He's actually going right and stuff like that. This isn't, look at me, I'm as pretty as a girl, Muhammad Ali. Now, this guy knows he's going to get hit. He knows he's not fast enough. He doesn't have the reflexes to avoid your punches. So what Jarrell Miller does is he's catching punches on his forearms. He has a rabbit ear defense that's like this. And as he comes in, not throwing punches, right? He's really catching shots on his forearm. He doesn't want to get out of the way because he wants to pressure you, right? He wants to always be in front of you. That's the other problem with Jarrell Miller. As I look at these highlights, you know, just saw the guy for 8 rounds. I'm not sure if this guy has even a semblance of a back foot game. Well, let's get back to him with the rabbit ears defense. You know, in the 8th round, Jarrell Washington figures out that he can land uppercuts and follow up with hooks around the rabbit ear guard. Right? By the way, Mikey Garcia figured this out against Adrien Broner. There are ways to beat rabbit ear type defenses, right? You come up the middle, you come around the side. And of course, while Miller is an athlete, while he does have some bounce, he's not coordinated enough to have all the bounce together. So as you're throwing on him, throwing hooks to hit him, he's not the kind of guy who can throw while you're throwing. Right? There's a certain pattern to his fights where, you know, he's either backing you up, getting an opening and throwing punches, or he's standing still, trying to absorb and survive your shots. Right? If he's fighting an Anthony Joshua, for example, a guy who's big, Joshua is taller than Jarrell Miller, doesn't have the weight. Right now, if Joshua learns a short game, I don't think he has a developed one right now. If he's a guy who, as Miller comes forward, is able to put a shoulder between himself and Miller, this is what Mayweather would do, right? Is able to put a shoulder between himself and Miller. Mayweather, Carlos Baldomir, if you want to look for a fight where Mayweather just draws a line in the sand, right? Joshua, if he's able to park Miller on his shoulder, right? Joshua, who has a great uppercut, as Vladimir Klitschko fans know, let me raise my hand for that, right? Joshua should be able to land uppercuts, land hooks, if he could subdue Miller, who's not throwing punches on the way in the middle of the ring. Right? Omar Figueroa is able to get you on a shoulder in the middle of the ring. In my opinion, That's the skill set needed to deal with this guy. Now, I suspect at heavyweight, you're really not going to find that much, right? I don't think Joshua, who's a young guy learning the sport, unbeaten, 100% KO ratio, I don't think Joshua has developed that wrinkle in his game yet. I know Deontay Wilder hasn't, right? Joseph Parker's interesting because, as I said, the way to beat Parker is to keep him asleep. It's not to threaten him, right? If you're aggressive like this guy is, I'm just telling you, Parker is a guy who has power on his back foot, right? Parker is a guy who might be able to dissect Miller, right? I wonder, though, whether Parker's going to wake up against Hughie Fury, a heavyweight fight coming up. Well, to sum up, Miller was able to walk down Jarrell Washington, who couldn't park him on his shoulder in the middle of the ring. Washington kept backing up. That was a mistake, right? In my opinion, that was a mistake because Jarrell Miller is really trying to corner you, isn't he? Right? I also felt that Washington's punches are a little bit wider than Miller's. I'll give Miller credit. When Miller opens up, you'll notice many of the punches have very short angles, right? So, if he backs you up, and then if there's a shootout, Miller's shots are going to get there first, right? Not that Miller wants to throw while you're throwing. But let's just say he's deceptively fast, right? I view Jarrell Miller as a serious threat to every man holding a belt. If I'm a promoter, this guy's such a great talker. He has such a fan-friendly style, right? Front foot, you know punches are going to land, right? The other guy can't miss him, really, right? Is at least going to hit his forearms. If I'm a promoter, this guy is a much more marketable fighter than, let's say, someone like Kubrat Pulev, who is relying off of a jab and a lot of subtlety, right? Let's talk about a fight that did not deliver for me, right? And I was stunned by the way the fight turned out. Stunned, not by who won it. Let's be clear on Mikey Garcia. In my opinion, Mikey Garcia, who's still unbeaten, was a Hall of Famer entering the ring, right? Keep in mind, Mikey already has 3 titles, folks, right? Has already won titles in 3 different weight classes. Think about it, right? This is Mikey in a 4th weight class. He had never fought at 140 before. And he decides to jump in the water against Adrien Broner. Now understand, if you have a top 10 list, and I'm being charitable here, because quite frankly, if you have a top 5 list, Mikey Garcia, who is still in his 20s, needs to be on it. What more do you need? Mikey Garcia's idea of fighting Adrien Broner. And keep in mind, Garcia's calling card is his power, right? His idea on how to beat Adrien Broner was to cut off the ring on him. Come forward. Try to knock him out. Make no mistake, Mikey tried. Folks, he's throwing straight right hands on Adrien Broner. This is not a guy trying to beat you by dancing. This is not a guy trying to leave it in the hands of the judges. I know the fight went the distance, trust me. It wasn't because Mikey Garcia wanted the fight to go the distance. Mikey Garcia spends at least, 7 or 8 rounds trying to stop Adrien Broner. He's on his front foot. Broner knew where to find him, right? Mikey, the hunter, is hunting. Now here's what I don't understand, because I was expecting a completely different fight. I was expecting a stoppage. Right? I thought Broner was the play. You were getting great odds on Broner. Believe it or not, I bet this fight early. I got something like 5-1 odds on Broner. Right? I know money came in on Broner. I believe in some shops he went off at less than a plus 200. But I thought Broner had everything he needed here. He had a guy who was going to be trying to collapse the pocket on him. He had a guy who was going to be looking for him, who was going to be in front of him. Broner didn't have to worry about finding Mikey Garcia. Now Broner, the bigger man, understand, he fights Paulie Malignaggi at 147. His last fight, Adrien Granados, that's at 147. He fights Sean Porter at welterweight. Right? This is a guy who's fought multiple fights, not at 140, but one weight class up. So you mean to tell me that Adrien Broner takes this fight at 140 against a guy who's never fought at 140? And you mean to tell me that Adrien Broner is the person who concedes the pocket? I thought Broner was going to draw a line in the sand. I thought Broner was going to treat Mikey Garcia like a guy having his first fight at 140 pounds. I thought Broner's point was going to be, look, you're in the wrong weight class, you're visiting my neighborhood, right? You're here trying to knock me out. Guess what? I'm going to be shooting bullets back at you. And as I said in the pre-fight video, I personally consider Adrien Broner to be defensively blessed. You don't believe me? All I'm saying is he just went up against Mikey Garcia. He goes the distance in the fight. Folks, he's completely coherent after the fight. He's not marked up. Right? He was able to handle Mikey Garcia's offensive game for 12 rounds. Did not hit the canvas. Did not come close to hitting the canvas. Right? Broner is defensively blessed. He knows how to get body parts between himself and the opponent. That head is tucked behind the chin. There's a great moment where Mikey Garcia gets Broner over by the side of the ropes early. I thought Broner looked great the first couple of rounds. And Broner just puts his hands up. Right? Broner lets Mikey Garcia know, look, that straight right hand, it's going to have to get through this. Right? Broner figures out exactly how to move to take Mikey out of his comfort zone. Here's the problem. I was expecting Broner to stop moving. Right? If you're the bigger man in the fight, I know they're both 5'6", but Broner had experience at 147. Right? Mikey still doesn't have experience at 147. If you're the bigger man in the fight, accustomed to fighting bigger opponents, and you're defensively blessed, doesn't there come a time where you let your opponent feel your bigger man punches? Right now, the fight starts. I thought Broner had a great first round. Broner was moving a lot more than I thought he could. Right? Broner's moving around the ring. Broner, a lot of lateral movement. So I thought, okay, Broner's in shape. Second round comes. Broner's still moving. I'm like, okay. Folks, by the 5th or 6th round, I started to ask myself, what's Broner doing? The only guy trying to force the action was Mikey Garcia. Let me also say this too, and I don't say this lightly. Juan Manuel Marquez fought Manny Pacquiao. And he's on his back foot trying to set traps for Manny Pacquiao, right? This is 4 fights of this, right? And Manny Pacquiao is jumping in, but understand, when Pacquiao jumps in, Marquez understands that Pacquiao's big punch from distance is a straight left hand. Pacquiao's a southpaw. Well, folks, Mikey Garcia is two-handed. Right? He's throwing left hooks to Broner's body. He's throwing a great straight right hand. When a guy's two-handed, you can't set traps and anticipate when he's going to jump in and what he's going to throw when he jumps in with any kind of certainty. Right? Mikey Garcia, folks, he's a great fighter. You don't know when he jumps in if he's going to jump in with a left hook down low, a left hook up top, a right hand down low, a right hand up top. So you can't fight a fight where you're backing up, Mikey's coming forward, cutting off the ring on you. First of all, think about it. That's a bad visual, right? The other guy is cutting off the ring on you. And I was wondering what Broner was hoping to accomplish here. Did he think that by backing up and vacating the pocket, he was going to be able to catch Mikey Garcia clean? Didn't happen. Right? What we had was Mikey showing up at 147 trying to make a statement. Right? Just like Marcos Maidana tried to make a statement, understand this game has a certain level of familiarity. Because the guy in Mikey Garcia's corner, one of boxing's best trainers, Robert Garcia, also trained Marcos Maidana. Right? So you have the guy who already beat Broner in the corner of Mikey Garcia, and Mikey Garcia's strategy is to be front foot heavy. And rather than take the attitude of, okay, you could be front foot heavy, but Mikey, this is not lightweight. This is 140 pounds. Let me show you what 140-pound punches feel like from a guy who, his last fight, weighed over 146 pounds. No, Broner, something happened here. Where Broner decided, I don't want to deal with Mikey's power. I don't want to push the issue until Mikey's tired. Right? This is almost like a rope-a-dope type thing. The problem was, Mikey Garcia in the 8th round, the 9th round, the 10th round, maybe Mikey was slowing down a little bit. But Mikey was well ahead in the fight at that point. And Mikey is a Hall of Fame level fighter, folks. He knew how to defend himself. Garcia was interesting too. While he's front foot heavy in the fight, you'll notice there are times where he pivots and he goes to his back foot. And you'll notice Mikey, and Mikey's a hunter, don't get me wrong. Mikey's accustomed to hitting you and watching you fall down. But Mikey also has defensive skills. So if Broner was expecting Mikey to be tired and to just collapse in the later part of the fight, it didn't happen. In my opinion, it didn't come close to happening. So I got beaten badly here. I thought Broner would try to impose size on Mikey Garcia. Right? I thought, keep in mind too, go through Mikey's record. Mikey was barely at 135. Understand, Mikey's a guy who has rapidly come up in weight. Right? Mikey doesn't have a lot of experience at 135. So we're talking about really just the latest chapter in the Mikey Garcia story. Right? This is a guy who not too long ago was fighting at 130. And here he is up at 140 against Adrien Broner. And guess what? Broner is the fighter in the fight who respects the other guy's punching power to the point where he's on his back foot, backing away, not engaging. Broner's hardly even throwing punches, folks. He's not pushing the issue at all. Right? By the 8th round, in my opinion, it became apparent that Broner needed a stoppage or at least several knockdowns to make the fight credible. In other words, by the 8th round, an argument can be made that Mikey Garcia had already won something like 7 rounds. Right? So, bad timing by Broner. Broner gave Mikey's punching power a lot of respect. Right? Maybe Mikey hits that hard at 140. We need to pay attention to it. Right? Broner, a guy who to me normally sprouts roots in the pocket, decides to give up the pocket too much so. This almost felt like I was watching the last Arthur Spielka fight, where Spielka comes in looking lighter than he normally does, and then unfortunately isn't enough of himself, you know, a blood and guts type fighter, to actually win the fight. Here, Broner, to me, almost loses it over the fact that he lost a lot of weight. Maybe he realized he was moving better than he normally moves, and so then he starts the fight and he's moving too much in the fight. Broner, you were fighting a lightweight in his first fight at 140. You're a master in the pocket. Why not trade punches with the guy? Who do you think has better defense? I think Broner has better defense than Mikey Garcia. Why not trade shots, see who blocks the most shots? Even Marcus Maidana admits that he was hurt against Broner. By the way, Broner fights Maidana, murderous puncher, at a higher weight than this. Why was Broner so afraid? That's what it looked like, folks. Why was Broner so afraid in the early rounds of Mikey Garcia's punching power? Right, so I lost on this one. I privately expected a KO. I thought Broner had a better shot of KOing Mikey Garcia than Mikey had of KOing Broner. Just given the fact that Broner had experience at 140 and Mikey didn't. Right, I was wrong. Kudos to Mikey Garcia and his team. You need to pay close attention to Mikey Garcia's career, because there are a bunch of excellent fighters who conceivably could fight Mikey Garcia next. Guess what? 140, that's Terence Crawford's neighborhood, isn't it? We keep hearing about Vasyl Lomachenko, right? Vasyl, I don't want to hear about you perhaps wanting to fight Rigondeaux, who isn't even in your weight class. Here's a guy at 140 who's a future boxing Hall of Famer, right? Unlike Lomachenko, who, let's face it, is just starting his career, right? I don't want to hear about the amateurs. This is professional boxing. Certainly as a professional boxer. Lomachenko, who looks very promising, don't get me wrong. He's on my list of the best fighters in the sport. But at this point, Lomachenko hasn't done what Mikey Garcia has done. Right? Let's just say if Lomachenko is striving for greatness, here is an obvious opponent who, again, I felt was a Hall of Famer as he entered the ring. Right? Titles in 3 different weight classes. Folks, he's still unbeaten. Now he has a win over Adrien Broner. Also, don't sleep on Jorge Linares. Right? I believe even Mikey Garcia understands that Linares has the faster hands than Mikey. Right? Linares' fights tend to be more of a shootout than this Broner fight was, right? Linares is not going to just dance for several rounds and then suddenly in the last third of the fight try to, get a stoppage, right? I think Linares, who also has belts in multiple weight classes, and Mikey Garcia would be a great fight, right? When a fighter gets to where Mikey Garcia is, in other words, he's had success, as I said, he's had a Hall of Fame career, you'll be surprised at the risks a fighter like that will take just to further cement his legacy, right? Different generation, fight I always like to refer to, Sugar Ray Robinson, after a Hall of Fame career, before he retires the first time, decides, you know what, let me move up in weight. and take on the light heavyweight champion Joey Maxim. Right? Those are the kind of moves right now Mikey Garcia is making. Right? He shows up at 140. Why not take on Adrien Broner? Let me go ahead and take on Adrien Broner, who just fought at 147. Right? Who knows what Mikey does next? I can say this, though, without hesitation. The first 6 rounds of this Broner fight, it seemed to me that Broner was very afraid of Mikey Garcia's power. Broner's the one on the move. Mikey Garcia is the guy trying to make a fight of it in his first fight at 140 pounds. That speaks volumes. Anyway, let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.